Climb on up. Today we're going to do the ladder sleeve. Come join us. Today we're going to make what we're going to call the ladder sleeve. So we're just going to climb right through all the concepts, make sure you get it right so you can make your own ladder t-shirt. So let's first look at the fabrics. There's so many options. Everything I saw online was actually solid, but I decided I wanted to use a fabric. This is on our site, it's called Matchsticks. But the reason I liked it so much is that it seemed that it was vertical and almost laddery looking. So if you want to just try it first in a solid and then go from there, again, this is a two-way stretch so that my stripes or my what looks to be vertical can go up and down. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out my pattern just as is. I'm not going to make any changes. For me in this particular garment, I'm going to make it a little bit longer, so I'm going to add a little bit of length. You all already know how to do that. All right, so now I've done all my cutting. Now is time for the fun to begin. So I'm going to take the sleeve, and I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm doing both layers. You can see I'm doing both layers at one time just because it's a knit fabric, it's thin, and there's no reason that I can't do both layers at one time and save myself the work. I folded it in half, and I'm cutting right down the center of the sleeve because I want my ladder to come in right on top of my arm, which is the center. All right, so now I've got my two sleeves. And I'll just show you with one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to serge the edge. And only because I have a serger. This is a knit. You don't have to do anything. But I'm going to go ahead and serge the edge, and then we'll continue. All right, so here's my sleeve. I've serged both edges, and again, knits don't need any finish, so you don't have to serge at all. But I just decided I wanted to, and I have a serger. All right, so now again, if you Google ladder sleeve, you're going to see lots of variables and lots of options. So these are just the options I chose. I'm going to have 12 or 13. Ladders, rungs of my ladder, I'm going to call it. So if I have that many rungs of my ladder and my sleeve itself is 24, I'm going to have one every 2 inches, basically. So just try to, and this is all styling. It has nothing to do with anything. However, what's not styling is, remember, the sleeve itself went like this. So because I don't want to change the circumference of the sleeve already fits. What I'm going to do is I have to decide how much opening I want between my rungs of my ladder, I'm going to call it. And I want 1 inch, so I'm going to fold this back 1/2 inch. And you take 2 1/2 inches, obviously, and that's going to give me my opening. And you can decide, again, you can completely decide. Just make sure that whatever the opening is, each side comes back half that amount. Now this again is where some fun stuff starts to come in, because the rungs of the ladder, I'm going to call it so we all know what we're talking about here. Now that's right at 1 inch. Can be so many different things. I'm going to use fold over elastic because it's thin, it's the look I want, it's finished on the edges. But gosh, there's so many variables. We have, like on the site, we have like a stretch elastic that would or stretch lace, that would be adorable. I saw one of the ladders online was, instead of having as many as I'm going to have, they only had like 3. And it was a whole 2-inch wide elastic, and it looked gorgeous. And there's some decorative elastics out there if you coordinate it with your fabric. Again, there's so many cute ideas. You could do it the fabric itself, you could do a contrasting fabric, you can make the little loops. You guys, on and on. I'm just going to give you the idea and give you the, the how-to as far as how to actually create it without changing any circumference. That's what we don't want to do, is change circumference. Once I turn that 1/2 inch back, I'm going to just trim that so that it equals the shape of the sleeve. I'm going to stitch this all down. Before I stitch it down though, this is where I'm going to cut my little rungs, I'm going to call it. Now, because an inch is showing, I'm going to cut each of mine 2 inches. And that just makes it easy. There's no set way, but what that means is it'll go all the way from this edge to this edge, and we'll have 1 inch showing in between. So it's just a little easier to keep the math straight so that my sleeve doesn't end up all cattywampus. So I'm going to cut my little pieces. They're all going to be 2 inches. And then I can be sure that, it's just a little bit easier. I'm going to pin it all. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this in place at the same time that I keep the fold, the part where I folded, at the same time I keep it folded back. And the reason I'm doing that is it's just all done in one fell swoop. If you notice I'm working from the wrong side, I think it's just really way easier. I'm actually going to sew from the wrong side. You could do 2 rows of stitching if you wanted, one on the outside of the elastic and then one on the inside of the elastic. It's totally your call. What you don't want to do is make sure that you can't get the sleeve too small. You got to make sure that the sleeve fits in the first place. But even if it's a little tight, it'll still work because I'm using fold over elastic and that's got stretch to it. So it would have a little bit of give to it without any problem. All right, so I'm just going to continue down. And again, I'm leaving about 1.5 inches in between each rung. And then what's opening here is 1 inch, so I folded back 1/2 inch on each side. I'm cutting my fold over elastic, or whatever you were using, 2 inches wide, so it goes all the way from edge to edge, just to keep things simple. And then I'll sew right along the edge of this, catching the fold over elastic as I go. And that's it. And basically what I'm going to do is just make the sleeve the rest of it, and we'll show you the results. All right, so I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's kind of what I wanted. I wanted them to be smaller and closer together. I'm going to take one and put it at the top. And the reason being for that is it will really, and it all doesn't have to show, but it's going to make the sewing portion a little bit easier if I've got the stability of that top when I'm sewing in the sleeve. So I'm not going to leave that top open. I'm going to secure it right there. And then what I wanted is the hem. I wanted it to be the elastic. So I just left it a hem, which is 1/2 inch from the bottom. And then what I'm going to do is I'll fold this up when I go to do the hem. You can see that the elastic is going to be the hem itself. It's going to be right at the bottom of the hem. So think about that, and you don't have to do what I'm doing, but think about what you're going to do to the hem, and then I put that up there just to make the sewing a little bit easier. And then if you look at this side, that's what my sleeve's going to look like. And you can kind of look at it and position it and make sure it looks okay. So I'm going to work again from the wrong side, and I'm just going to stitch right at the edge of this seam. So I'm about 1/2 inch from the edge. And I want to make sure that I'm catching the elastic. my trim, my fold over, whatever that is, as I go down. And pinning this fold over elastic with your pin at an angle will really help, because if you notice here, especially if the pin comes up at the edge of the fold over, I can actually leave the pin in if the head is angled over. Otherwise, as I stitch down, you can see there the elastic comes up just a little bit. So I've sewed one side, just one side, and you can just look at the front. I think I'm going to sew another row. I want it to be flat there in the middle. I don't want it to pull like that. So I'm going to work on the inside, from the inside again. I'm just going to sew right next to the fold. I've got my top on. I love it. I love it. You guys can see there's so many variables you can do. Wide ones, thin ones, all kinds of variables, so many fabrics. And I'm actually off to make ladder leggings. Later, happy sewing from Silhouette Patterns.